Welcome to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers Podcast. Each episode will bring you conversations from business leaders and up-and-coming stars in the commercial real estate industry in Canada. Our guests will share their unique career journeys, passions, and advice on what it takes to be successful in this industry. This podcast is brought to you by Highview Partners, connecting people who perform in Canadian real estate.
I am your host, James Ashley, and today I have the pleasure of connecting you with Michelle Walker. Michelle has over 20 years of Canadian and international experience in real estate management, investment, and development across office, industrial, retail, and multi-unit residential. Michelle has held senior and executive roles with the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, Starbucks Coffee Company, Regis Corporation, Canadian Tire Corporation, and more recently, BGIS. Michelle graduated with her BA in Psychology and Linguistics in the United States. She is also a certified coach with the Hudson Institute of Santa Barbara, an active member of the International Coaching Federation, Cornet, and BOMA. Michelle is also the past co-president of the Seattle LGBTQ Community Center and Helpline for Gay Youth. An industry leader, passionate coach, proud gay woman, it is my pleasure to connect you with Michelle Walker.
Thank you, James. Well, it's always great to talk to you. And thank you for your generous introduction. And when I hear 20 plus years, I think dog years, which, really, I'm only 22. Is that okay? All right.
That is okay. Well, it's so good to have you here. Thank you so much. So let's get started. And so where we'd like to begin is with the journey, Michelle. So let's talk through the career path. So firstly, why did you choose this industry and what attracted you to real estate?
There was, I'll have to be honest, some cradle influence here. I was a homegrown recruit. Both my parents were in the property management business, and specifically my dad, when he was 23 years old, he was an entrepreneur and he started his own property management firm in Toronto, and he ran that for 40 plus years. So myself and my 5 siblings, it was a requirement to work for him. A lot of our summer jobs were anywhere from the landscaping to office work. So I think I came by it quite honestly. It was a family business for many years before I jumped in officially after I returned from university.
During that time, what were some of the asset classes that you were exposed to working in the family company?
Well, I started out in multi-res, and my dad said, Michelle, there's no money in multi-res. You need to go into commercial. So while you learn, I think multi-res teaches you an awful lot about customer service. Really, you're dealing with people's homes. But I did quickly start working in other types of portfolio, mixed-use portfolio, commercial, retail, industrial, and office, and shopping centers as well.
So now that you're looking back over your career, what would you say has been your favorite asset class that you've had to manage, and why is that?
That's so easy. I think by far retail. Retail is very dynamic. And the real estate isn't the core business. It's a platform for something much bigger. That's about human behavior and consumers. And it's constantly changing. And I learned so much supporting international real estate during my tenure with Starbucks. Retailers have to innovate constantly or they die. And I was able to really cut my teeth and learn a lot about not just real estate, but actually early business analytics. I was really lucky at Starbucks because as a retailer, and they invested very early in the curve, way ahead of the real estate industry in things like machine learning and business analytics. So love retail because they're always on the cutting edge. They have to be.
Fantastic. What would you say, just to sort of build on that a bit, what were some of the lessons that you took from Starbucks into future roles within retail?
I think the discipline of the analytics and the focus on the end customer, right? The real estate always has an end in mind. It has a purpose. And you get all caught up in just the real estate for the sake of real estate. You can mean well, but lose sight of why is it all there? What's it supposed to be doing? It's enabling something bigger. And I think retail never lets you forget that.
Absolutely. So let's go inside, and not to sort of bring down the mood of the conversation here, but we all have we all have our periods of darkness. There are times when we look back and we think, gosh, that was that was challenging, that was tough times. But usually those bring about the biggest lessons. Where there is the gap brings forward the light. So what has been one of your darkest hours in real estate, and what have been the lessons that you learned from that?
That's a great question. Well, first of all, you're right. If you're not failing, you're not learning. If you're not failing, you're not pushing yourself. You're an autopilot. But it's painful. I think early in my career, to be honest, I was very afraid to come out as a gay woman because I thought it would just close the doors of my career and I'd come up against bias, and I really wanted to do well and just focus on the work. But the opposite happened is I was completely distracted as a young woman, and it really took away from my career focus. So I believe, not to be hypercritical, but I was a bit of a late bloomer because until I got over that bridge on who am I and being my authentic self, as soon as I could do that, then I could really just focus on the business. And I think understanding, getting comfortable with who I was and what my values are, it just made my work and my whole life much easier. And just being, it's a lot less work just to be who you are and to be authentic than to make something up. And then choices that come your way, what fits, doesn't fit, all those decisions just become more obvious. And so your energy isn't consumed by that. And I think we all have, more likely early in our life, but sometimes we just don't tame them soon enough, are all these boogeymen issues, which are really about what do other people think and what do other people expect of me, or what am I supposed to do, or just what are my fears? And I think, really I served myself when I finally tackled that stuff, got comfortable with who I was, and then I could really start excelling at what I was good at.
Do you remember when there was that turning point? Was that time in your career when this just came up to the surface and you can look back to that point and say, that's when things changed?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was being interviewed by the then president of Starbucks Canada. And he was just being friendly. It was very casual. I was getting the job offer from the VP of real estate at the time. And Colin just sat down beside me casually and said, hey, tell me more about yourself. Are you married? Do you have kids? Whatever. And I just thought, this is it. I'm going to be myself. And if they don't like it, I'll just keep looking until I find a place I fit in. And I said, well, no, I have a partner, and I told the truth. And, he didn't bat an eye. And it was never an issue in that company. Not 1 minute, not one iota. It truly was an early diverse company where it just didn't matter. It didn't matter. And that was huge for me. And that was the first year in my professional life where I took my partner to the Christmas party. It was a very freeing thing. I knew exactly that moment, and it was a great moment for me.
Fantastic. And how different that moment could have been if that conversation had gone differently, where you made yourself so vulnerable. And it's just amazing that it went the direction that it went. And I'm sure it's probably just changed the course of how, you have then gone on to lead people and your communication with people as you've moved through your career as well.
Totally. And I think, it's not about being gay specifically. It's about just the courage of knowing what you're about, who you are, what's important to you, and putting it out there. And if you hit friction, I think there's a time to fight, but there's also a time to go where you can make the biggest difference in your career and in your life. Right. And that fit. So, you're going to accidentally be a misfit if you're not living your whole truth.
So from the journey, let's spend some time looking at the passion here. Let's talk about what motivates you, what matters to you, what pushes Michelle Walker forward in her career. So the place I'd like to start at is looking at all the places that you've worked, Michelle, and obviously there's been a number of them over the years. What environment really elevated your performance in the workplace, and why was that?
Um, I would have to say without question, it was early to mid career when I I worked at Starbucks, and in that company culture was my first exposure to a culture where how you worked was as or even more important as getting things done. Um, it was centered around transparent honesty and a true commitment to helping people just be better people as whole people. And that was really my first exposure to that. And I was provided a professional coach for the first time. That actually strongly influenced my decision later on to become a certified coach. I'm still learning every day, but that was a really big growth spurt for me because it was a very safe and knowledgeable environment. And it really helped me see some blind spots and how to be better. And a lot of that was my ambition or what I wanted to accomplish. I was very single-minded, and sometimes people would say, I know, Michelle, you're dragging dead bodies with you across the finish line when you're trying to get a project done.
Right.
But what people have to slow down and take time, meaning other leaders, when you're managing people, to show you that blind spot with care, with kindness. And the intention isn't performance management, I'm going to fire you. The intention of that is, hey, I want to help you become a better person. So I'm going to invest the time and the effort. And it's hard to have these crucial conversations. Say, do you know this is how you should? And a lot of times people aren't aware. It's about raising awareness, saying, so can we work on this together and you practice showing up differently so you can have a more positive impact? I mean, that's life-changing because it doesn't just start showing up in your work. It starts showing up at home and in your personal relationships and in your volunteer work. So it elevates you as a person when people care enough to help you with that.
Absolutely. And with that comes leadership, and leadership is such an important ingredient in that process. So what would you say, what does it take to be a great leader?
Well, that's a really big question. I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer. I'm still in a steep learning curve on that. The more you lead, the more you learn. And it's actually very humbling. I'm of the mindset that leaders eat last. It's a famous Simon Sinek book. But that resonated with me from the first page when I read it. And for many, many years, I've been a student of Brené Brown. I mean, she's big and well-known now, but she's 10 books in. Amazing. She's been around a long time. But just about her authenticity and being vulnerable. So that all resonates with me. And I think great leaders have pieces of that. But I think a great leader understands that it's not about your title or your positional power. It's really a huge responsibility to a group of human beings. And I think it should actually be called fellowship. It shouldn't be called leadership. Because whether people truly follow you is actually a true measure. So I wish they'd change the term. But I, in an abbreviated sense, I think our job as leaders is to truly listen, to create safety, so people can tell the truth, set direction, support, and coach. Be willing to have those really honest, crucial, difficult conversations to help people be better. And that's a skill. It's not easy. And own up to your mistakes as a leader so you can show folks how to do that. And it's truth telling. And then do it the best you can each day with authenticity, integrity, and confidence. Yeah.
Well, very well answered. And I think, the more that we run these podcasts, the more we see that everyone has a different approach to leadership. But one thing becomes this common theme, and that is that it is really about getting the best out of people and making people succeed. It's a really important part of the journey of leadership. Where would you say that we've talked about some of the people that have impacted on you, but when it comes to your leadership, where have you felt that you really had an impact, on a team, or it could be an individual? What stands out for you when we talk about leadership?
I think for me, one is paying attention and seeing where people really have the ability, the skills, they have the core ingredients to go farther and do more than they personally believe they can. Like, I don't think you snow people and say, oh, you're great, you know, you're going to be president or prime minister. I'm not, if it's not true, don't lie to people. But I think it's whatever their next journey step is, a lot of times people will say, well, I can't do that. And so for me, what's most rewarding is helping people through that journey when it's real and reachable in their step and their growth, that they can do it. And then when they do it, like just the look on their face, the growth in their self-confidence, and they look back and go, holy cow, I didn't think I could do that. And we did it. That's amazing to me. And, you know, that's all most people really need is some practical support and just some confidence. And because it'll be a bumpy ride. So when they hit some bumps, instead of giving up and going, oh, I'm failed, saying, oh, no. How do you think we can get this back on track? What did we learn? Let's get to that finish line. And most people want that. Most people can do that with the right support and direction. And that's amazing to me. I love that.
Absolutely. In terms of talking about finish lines there, you know, not to look too far ahead to your finish line, but in terms of what you're out to create with your role in the industry, what impact are you looking to create and are you working towards going forward at this time?
I know that I really, I like to disrupt the status quo, James. And I think that's in how businesses run. I think looking to self-disrupt and how should it be given how things are moving and changing. But I think disrupting the status quo as far as equality, gender equality, LGBT, you know, all of that, I think you have to keep sort of pushing all those old boundaries and continually push people to think differently is important. I believe that you either have to be committed to self-disrupting or you will be disrupted or dethroned, if you will, by another company or another industry or maybe another leader. And, you know, that message is actually not always popular with old school company cultures. But I don't want my work headstone to read, she went along with everything and questioned nothing. Right? So ultimately, I measure my impact one person at a time. And I will, at a given time, do all I can with what I have to support a willing colleague. That's how I measure my impact. But I think I actually am quite attached to disruption.
Are you ready to make your best next move in the Canadian real estate industry? We know moving to a new job is a career-defining decision, so our team will help you recognise and leverage the skills and passion that drive your performance. We want you to make the right choice and feel confident you are joining a team of people who perform. So contact us today or visit us at highviewpartners.ca/candidates.
With listening to the things that you are focused in on, the things that you're looking to impact, I want to bring this back to gender equality. Like, we've known each other for a number of years now, and it's come up in our conversations at times about, you know, how important gender equality is. Why does it matter to you? Why is it so important?
Well, gender's a big one. I think all equality is important, obviously including gender equality. I think philosophically, right, most economies have been measuring some important equality gaps like gender or race, etc. So we can start to progress, right, and be accountable and close those gaps. But there are, by the way, there's so many equality measurements that are still just left unmeasured, like hidden. And I think we need to do better as a world and as companies and as leaders. But ultimately, right, we are our best selves in our work tribe or our social tribe or our family tribe when we embrace and value equally just the richness of diversity of thought and diversity of skill sets and diversity of how to solve something. And And I think that's the secret sauce of optimal creativity and problem solving. It's actually been long documented by all the major universities, whether it's Yale or Harvard, right? The companies with diverse leadership teams and workforces outperform by landslide those companies that are very old, homogeneous kind of, right? Like everybody's got the same engineering degree or whatever the case may be, right? Because it's only one way of thinking. And all that richness and the blooming that occurs when you have all that broad, sometimes conflicting thinking going on, and all those different lenses. Imagine, right? We have like today, I think with the COVID-19, right? You got people around the world, different sciences, different scientists, medical engineers coming at all those problems. And suddenly you see, I mean, the good news is what's popping, right? You see like, I've re-engineered, a machine and I've come up with a new antibody. I mean, those are just a diverse bunch of people from all over the world going at, a group of really serious problems. So think about that. I think that's really how we should operate in the world every day, where there's a great deal of welcome diversity from basically every corner. And that's why equality, gender equality, all of it is really important, because without it, you get a slanted, one-sided, narrow view of business and view of strategy and view of solutions. So
it also really helps to just build those layers as well. So when you're bringing in so much diversity, new ideas, experiences, ways of doing things, it just really helps to elevate everyone's game. And I guess with that, what has been your contribution to gender equality at work, and how has that helped to elevate the environment that you've been working in? And perhaps it expands beyond you, but we could also look at the contribution of the teams that you've been a part of as well.
Sure. I think, I mean, you know me, I'm not a Hollywood or a big stage type person. I'm fairly introverted.
You're not one to blow your own trumpet. Yeah.
Well, I'm also, I could talk a storm, but I'm a bit of an introvert. I think we all contribute in our circles of influence by boldly speaking our truth in our own authentic way and knowing our contributions and ideas matter, even in the face of being diminished. Because when you're coming up against that equality issue resistance, sometimes it's not even conscious, to be honest. That's when you know you need to boldly hold your ground and not back down. And sometimes that's required. And when I see, as an example, another woman at work being diminished or not being taken seriously, I do all I can to support her publicly as well as privately. Privately, maybe keep up the fight. You're totally right. I support you. How do we get this idea across the finish line? So I think we remind each other what real power is and that we actually have it. Because sometimes, in the moment it can feel like you don't. And it aligns with who we influence and not who tries to diminish us. And again, I don't think it's always conscious. I don't think, in the gender discussion, I don't think men are in the workplace often, honestly, consciously trying to diminish women's ideas or their roles. I think a lot of it's very unconscious, and that's why I think boldly speaking out is critical.
Michelle, let's take a moment to revisit a conversation that you and I had in a panel discussion last June, I believe, at the Metro Centre in Toronto, where we talked about advancements in technology. And for the viewers that are listening who didn't attend that panel discussion, how have advancements in technology changed? And particularly, how has it changed the way that you go about your work?
Well, I definitely, every day technology is changing everything in real estate, from how physical space is used across really every single asset class, how it's managed, and also how real estate data is analyzed and mined for insights. And I think the biggest shift continues to be people innovating and finding ways to use technology to be more proactive and predictive, right? To see something before it's apparent, or to mitigate a risk before something happens. Something as simple as a leak, but way more sophisticated models than that on every aspect, I think, of real estate management and in all the asset classes. And in turn, what that allows is what clients are looking for and operators are looking for, which is to optimize really their assets and make their spend very predictable and safeguarded from, surprises. I think like all industries, technology allows the redeployment of labor as efficiencies are realized, right? So there actually is no industry on earth that's not affected by technology. And that then changes basically the core labor model of how services are provided, and real estate is absolutely no exception. I spent the last 3 years of my career redesigning the commercial management model, leveraging technology to achieve a very significant change in the labor model in the future. And I think that will continue to happen. And what Lori Rowlandson says, an SVP at BGIS, who is really just one of the most amazing strategists I've ever known, cites information out of the industry and technology that, 80% of the technology we're going to be using from 10 years from now hasn't even been invented yet. Mm-hmm. And so, again, as things come out of the pipe and ideas merge, again, it's going to just change how real estate is used.
Michelle, knowing all that you know now, what single piece of advice would you give to the younger Michelle Walker?
Know yourself. Take the time to know who you are.
Yeah.
And be your authentic self. And definitely choose to work with people and companies who truly share your values. It's so really hard sometimes you have to swim against the current anyway for a lot of reasons, especially when you're young starting out. But if you can at least align with people and companies where you have shared values, it won't feel so much like work. And it'll be more rewarding more quickly.
I think that's great advice. The younger Michelle Walker really appreciated that.
No, and I also said, hey, get a coach, before I knew what coaching was.
Get a coach. Let's take a moment now to step away from the industry and spend a little more time getting to know you. A passion you and I both share, we've talked about it many times, is our love for travel, close to home and far and wide, and particularly the trips that teach us lessons along the way. So which international and Canadian destinations stand out to you the most? Perhaps one you visited and the other you've yet to explore?
Ooh, that's hard. I'll start with the international side. My wife and I have been very fortunate. We've traveled to a lot of places in the world, and we still have a bucket list that we're working through. But I would have to say that a few years ago, we went to the Galapagos Islands with National Geographic. And that was actually life-changing. I think just understanding the fragility of nature through the eyes of Darwin, who studied there a long time ago, and it prompted his life work. It just really spoke to me about how we need to dramatically change how we treat our planet and all the species in it. And, that would include each other, by the way. It just seeing that fragility and that relatively untouched part of that unique part of the world, just really, it came home very hard with me. And it was very life-changing view. For Canada, love Canada. My wife is American, so I drag her around gradually to show her all the different pieces. And love the mountains and love the West Coast. But the one I'm looking most forward to is I'd like to go to the Hudson's Bay area, or up eventually we'd like to go to the Arctic. But to see the polar bears, honestly, I worry that the damage as humans we're doing to the planet, that there won't be many left. But I very, very much, in a non-invasive way, would love to go up to Hudson's Bay and see that part of Canada is next on our list.
I am very much in agreement. I've not visited the Galapagos Islands, but the time I spent in Iceland last year, it elevated my understanding on what you've shared about the fragility of our planet. The glaciers there alone, they've retreated by more than 750 square kilometers in the last 2 decades. And to help put that into perspective, the city of Toronto is 100 square kilometers less in scale. So yes, the message here is the size of the impact, but also there is a role that we can all play in protecting our environment. And the more I travel, the more lessons I bring home. And I think with all that is happening in the world at this time, we should all take more time to reflect, be responsible in raising our awareness to reduce our impact.
It's exactly. And now with COVID-19, here's the interesting thing, right? You see you have to dig through, and I do every morning, dig through for positive news stories. And the earth is healing a tiny bit while we are standing still. And you're kind of like, it can't be the same when we're done for a million reasons. But that's sure one good one, right? Is maybe we do our work and we interact differently, and we don't all get into these gas guzzling cars one at a time, a million people on the highway every morning to go to a tower, right? So there may be some blessings. Obviously, the lost life, there is no blessing there, but maybe there's some learnings in COVID-19 here.
So Michelle, that brings me to my final question, and that is your advice. And we're going to be speaking specifically to somebody that's looking to start out in this industry, somebody looking to step into this space. What would be your advice that you would give to somebody looking to make that first step into real estate?
Not that different than my dad's advice to me, but maybe a little more broad. I'd say sample the real estate buffet, because real estate actually is a very broad industry, right? There's construction, there's property management, there's leasing, there's development, there's facilities, there's so much. And now technology is disrupting and should disrupt the living daylights out of all of those areas of real estate. So sample the buffet to really see what you really enjoy and what really just sparks something for you, and what you're really good at, what fits in with your talents. Because actually real estate is just, like I said, so broad that it's, I think early on, sampling those different parts of it to figure out what best fits what you want is great. And then I think all of those, how it was and how it will be, is changing very, very quickly. So understanding technology, how quickly it's evolving and disrupting all those facets of real estate. And I think my final piece of advice is be a disruptor.
Wise words of wisdom to wrap up our session here today, Michelle. Our industry, it is broad. There are many avenues to explore. So definitely sample the real estate buffet, see what flavors and tastes fit with you, what is important to your growth, your development, and your well-being. We've also touched upon the need to understand technology as it continues to advance, and it is evolving at such a pace. And that's driving significant change in how we go about doing our work. And finally, Michelle mentioned the disruptor, somebody who challenges organizational habits and works to find positive alternatives. It is not the easier road to travel, but it may just prove to be the most fulfilling and rewarding for you and your colleagues. Michelle, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for your valuable contributions and insights. There was so much depth and meaning to what has been shared today, and I'm sure this will inspire and move others to step up and step in to the real estate industry. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast brought to you by Highview Partners, a talent search and recruitment firm focused exclusively on Canadian real estate. If your real estate team is looking to find the best next hire, or if you're ready to make the best next move in your career, then reach out to Highview Partners today. Follow us on LinkedIn and visit us at highviewpartners.ca.